Imagine this, you're in a crowded room, not just full of people, but full of energy, noise, distractions, the kind of atmosphere that's supposed to feel alive. Laughter echoes across the space. Everyone looks like they belong, but you don't. Not really. You smile, you speak, you engage, but something inside feels detached, like you're performing yourself, not actually being yourself. You start to wonder how many people in this room feel exactly the same way, but no one says it. We just keep pretending. Now fast forward, you're alone. The world is finally quiet. It's late, maybe 2 a.m. The kind of silence that makes your thoughts louder. A flicker of memory passes through your mind. Something painful, maybe forgotten. It hits you unexpectedly, like a ghost that's never stopped haunting you. And for once, there's no one to perform for, no mask to wear, just you and whatever's buried beneath the noise. This is what philosophers call a moment of existential contact, when the persona we wear slips and we brush against something raw, real and terrifying. We live in a culture that worships connection, more followers, more friends, more noise. We equate constant interaction with meaning, but what if connection isn't always clarity? What if we've become so addicted to validation, to being seen and heard and approved of, that we've forgotten how to see and hear ourselves? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't fear loneliness. They fear facing the version of themselves that emerges in silence, the one that can't be filtered, the one that remembers every rejection, every failure, every ache. We're terrified of solitude, not because it's empty, but because it's full of things we've tried to suppress. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if solitude isn't punishment, but privilege? Arthur Schopenhauer, often painted as a pessimistic philosopher, believed something radical, that the intelligent mind will eventually seek solitude not out of despair, but out of insight. He wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, because only in solitude do our thoughts become our own. Not what the world expects, not what our social circles reward, but what we actually think, feel, and believe." This is a dangerous idea. Why? Because solitude doesn't just reveal who you are, it reveals who you're not, and forces you to reckon with how much of your life has been lived as a performance. Think about that for a second. How many of your goals were really yours? How many of your beliefs came from deep thought versus group agreement? How much of your identity has been shaped not by intention, but by reaction? And here's where the paradox gets even darker. We chase connection, hoping to be seen, but often become invisible to ourselves in the process. So here's the real question. This video dares to ask, what if the version of you that feels most lost in the crowd isn't actually lost, but buried beneath layers of noise, expectations, and survival strategies? And what if the way back isn't through more input, more feedback, more distraction, but through a return to quiet? A return to that space within yourself that doesn't demand applause, agreement, or approval, just attention. Because maybe the cure for modern confusion isn't more connection. Maybe it's intentional disconnection, a sacred space where no one else gets a vote, and yet most people will never go there, not because they can't, but because they've mistaken silence for weakness, stillness for laziness, and solitude for emptiness. But as you'll soon see, solitude isn't where you're lost, it's where you find everything you didn't know you were missing. And so we begin. This isn't a story about loneliness, it's a story about remembering, about why those who dare to step away from the world often return with insights that change it forever. Let's go deeper. Why is it that some of the most brilliant minds in history have consistently chosen to walk alone? It's not because they were antisocial, it's not because they hated people, it's because they saw something most people spend their entire lives trying not to see. They discovered that solitude isn't emptiness, it's clarity, a kind of mental space where thought isn't shaped by expectation, where insight isn't filtered through social approval. Schopenhauer once wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone." But behind those words lies something deeper. He wasn't romanticizing isolation. He was warning us that the moment you start needing others to tell you who you are, what to think, what to feel, what to believe, you've already surrendered the one thing that makes you truly human: your ability to think independently. Solitude is not a retreat from life. It's a return to your original self, before the noise, before the labels, before the need to perform for the crowd. And here's the twist most people never see coming. Choosing to be alone might not be a sign of weakness. It might be the clearest sign of intelligence, not IQ, not academic success, but a different kind of intelligence, the kind that questions, that observes, that creates, rather than reacts, conforms, or imitates. If that resonates with you, if you're the kind of person who's tired of superficial connection and wants to explore the deeper side of human nature, then hit subscribe, because on this channel, we don't just talk motivation, we explore philosophy, psychology, and the quiet truths most people are too distracted to hear. Solitude isn't about running away from the world, it's about stepping away just far enough to finally see it clearly. The people who choose to be alone haven't given up on humanity. They've just realized something painful, that most human connection, while dressed up as intimacy, is actually a web of emotional dependency, intellectual conformity, and social manipulation. Not all of it, but most. And the cost of staying plugged into that system 24/7 is that you never truly become yourself. Solitude isn't about isolation, it's about liberation, not from people, but from the versions of yourself you created to keep them comfortable. Why does the highest form of intelligence often require the courage to be profoundly alone? Let's start here. Most people believe they're thinking for themselves, but they're not. They're echoing what they've heard, reacting to what's expected, internalizing the values of a crowd they never consciously chose to join. Schopenhauer saw this with painful clarity. He believed that the will of the masses, this blind collective force that shapes society, wasn't just noisy or annoying. He saw it as intellectual suicide, not because people are stupid, but because even the smartest among us can get trapped in a kind of group hypnosis, a slow erosion of independent thought disguised as belonging. Think about it. How many of your thoughts are truly yours? Not just your opinions on politics or culture, but your tastes, your priorities, your emotional responses. Where did they come from? From your upbringing, your peer group, social media, a belief system you inherited before you could question it. Here's the terrifying realization that Schopenhauer and many other great minds came to understand. The moment you're in a group, even a group of two, you're no longer thinking at full capacity. Why? Because part of your mind is no longer free. It's busy watching how others react, monitoring tone, adjusting your expression, filtering your thoughts before they're spoken. And it's not even conscious, it's automatic. You don't realize it's happening, but it is. You hold back a question that might seem weird. You laugh at a joke that isn't funny. You avoid a topic because it might make someone uncomfortable. Little by little, you trade clarity for comfort, truth for safety. And over time, the sharpness of your inner voice, the part of you that questions, that doubts, that sees clearly, starts to fade. Not because it's gone, but because it's drowned out by the noise of fitting in. Solitude then becomes a form of rebellion, not against people, but against the unconscious pull of collective thought. There's a line most never cross. It's the line between thinking within a group and thinking beyond it. To cross that line, you don't just need intelligence, you need courage, because beyond it is silence. And in that silence, there's no one to applaud you, correct you, or affirm you. There's only you, your thoughts, your fears, your truth. That's where the real thinking begins. And it's why solitude isn't just freedom, it's a crucible, a place where borrowed beliefs burn away, and what remains is yours, raw, unpolished, unfiltered, but real. The human brain wasn't designed for pure independence. It was engineered for survival in groups. Over thousands of years, evolution shaped mechanisms that keep us connected, mechanisms that subtly change how we think whenever other people are present. And here's the disturbing truth. Those mechanisms don't just help us cooperate, they limit us. When we're in a group, even a small one, we become less original. less willing to take intellectual risks, less capable of following an idea into uncomfortable territory. Your mind splits in two. One part tries to think, the other part scans the room. Will they approve? Am I fitting in? Do I sound too strange, too bold, too different? This doesn't feel like a conscious choice, because it isn't. It's automatic, wired into the nervous system. Schopenhauer saw this centuries ago, and he realized that most people never experience their full intelligence because they're never truly left alone with it. They move seamlessly from family to workplace to social gatherings, from entertainment to conversation, never more than a few steps away from someone else's voice, someone else's opinion, someone else's energy, surrounded always by noise. The rare individual who chooses solitude has made a radical, almost frightening decision. They've decided that access to their own mind is worth more than the comfort of constant approval. They've realized that their best ideas, their deepest insights, their most powerful creations don't come from brainstorming with a crowd, but from the quiet crucible of sustained, solitary thought. This doesn't mean they can't collaborate or that they despise human company. Far from it. It simply means they've discovered the difference between engaging with others from a place of inner fullness and engaging out of intellectual dependency. Watch closely the next time you're in a group conversation. Notice how the most intelligent people often seem just a little detached, not because they don't care, but because part of their mind is always watching, observing how collective thought forms, noticing how individual clarity dissolves into group conformity. They've learned something most people never will, that the price of belonging to the crowd is often nothing less than your independent mind. And for them, that price is far too high. Let's go deeper. There's a difference, an invisible but radical difference, between someone who is alone and someone who is at home in solitude. It's easy to misunderstand this. Most people imagine the solitary life as something cold, lonely, maybe even a bit tragic. But what they don't see, what they can't see, is what happens inside the mind of a person who has cultivated their inner world. They don't retreat because they can't connect. They retreat because they've found something more compelling inside themselves than most social settings could ever offer. Arthur Schopenhauer called this the art of being alone without being lonely. It's not avoidance, it's mastery. It's the ability to be immersed in silence and not feel fear, to sit with your own thoughts and actually find them fascinating. This is a level of psychological development most people never even attempt, let alone achieve. Why? Because when most people are alone, they feel restless, empty, uncomfortable, bored. Not because solitude is the problem, but because they've never developed the internal landscape to meet it. But those who do, they discover something incredible, that the most fascinating conversations don't happen at dinner tables. They happen in the stillness between thoughts, in books, in creation, in the quiet, strange spaces where your imagination finally gets the room to breathe. Schopenhauer didn't just spend time alone, he built entire universes in his mind. He developed what he called the world as representation, a philosophy that saw reality not as a fixed thing but as something constructed inside consciousness. This wasn't escapism, it was a deeper form of engagement with reality. He didn't need endless entertainment, background noise, or constant interaction, because his inner world was rich, layered, and endlessly fascinating. This terrifies people who rely on external validation, people who confuse stimulation with meaning, people who believe that silence is emptiness, when in truth it's a doorway. The intelligent person knows solitude isn't isolation, it's invitation, an invitation to explore the mind as a universe. But this inner richness doesn't appear by accident. It's cultivated through reading, through deep thought, through creativity and curiosity, through wrestling with hard questions, building aesthetic sensitivity, and seeking truth without shortcuts. This is the work, not of hiding from the world, but of preparing to meet it on your own terms. So when the intelligent person chooses to be alone, they're not rejecting society, they're refining themselves, They're tuning the instrument of their mind, sharpening it for ideas most people will never touch. They're not lonely. They're in the company of giants, talking with the dead through books, wrestling with Nietzsche, arguing with Huxley, laughing with Seneca, walking alongside Jung and Dostoevsky through forests of thought most people will never even glimpse. To the outside world, this looks like withdrawal. To the solitary thinker, it feels like coming home, because they're not just by themselves, they're finally with themselves. And that makes them look strange, even threatening. Why? Because their contentment breaks a rule, an unspoken agreement that happiness requires noise, that peace only comes when other people approve of you, that silence must mean something's wrong. But the solitary mind isn't broken. It's simply not addicted to distraction. It's found something better, depth. And from that depth comes the third insight. Here's something most people never realize. Even the smartest, most well-meaning people in your life, friends, teachers, colleagues, family, still represent a limit on your thinking. Not because they want to hold you back, but because their very presence triggers your social brain. You adjust your tone, you filter your ideas, you perform without even knowing it. And that's the trap. You can never reach your full intellectual depth when someone is watching. True solitude, the kind that expands the mind rather than shrinks it, is where the extraordinary begins. It's where you stop editing your thoughts, where you chase ideas that make no sense yet, where you follow your curiosity not for approval, but for truth. This is the birthplace of genius. Think about it. Newton, isolated during the plague, formulates the laws of motion. Darwin, on a solitary voyage, reshapes biology. Einstein, in near-total obscurity, develops the theory of relativity. Schopenhauer, walking alone in Frankfurt, builds a framework for existential thought that still haunts us today. None of these breakthroughs came from group chats. None were brainstormed at dinner parties. They came from minds that wandered far beyond the reach of consensus. And here's the terrifying part. They didn't know if they were right. They had no one cheering them on. They had no feedback loop of likes or comments or affirmations. They simply sat with their ideas and let time, thought, and depth do their work. That's what solitude allows. It's not just silence from the world, it's access to parts of your mind that don't speak unless everything else is quiet. Your brain, like your body, has limited energy, and most people burn that energy on shallow things, polite small talk, unspoken tensions, emotional maintenance, subtle competition. Every conversation costs cognitive fuel, even pleasant ones. But the intelligent person who chooses solitude has made a strategic decision. They've decided to invest that energy into creation, not maintenance. They're not antisocial, they're efficient. They protect their mental resources the way an elite athlete protects their muscles. Schopenhauer understood this. He structured his entire life around preserving his attention. He avoided casual relationships. He walked alone. He read deeply, thought obsessively, and produced work that outlived his own time. People said he was eccentric. They missed the point entirely. He simply knew that cognitive energy is sacred, and society is addicted to wasting it. When you step outside the noise, or when you stop being pulled into every interaction, you begin to see the patterns. You notice that most people are living in loops, reacting to the same triggers, fighting the same battles, performing the same roles. You begin to see through the illusion of urgency. You recognize that much of what people call connection is emotional bargaining, and that much of what they call purpose is just the fear of silence dressed up in productivity. Solitude gives you distance, and from that distance you see clearly. But clarity comes with a cost, because once you see it, once you really understand the patterns, you can't go back. You can't unsee the emptiness of social posturing. You can't fake interest in trivial conversation. You can't pretend that everyone chasing status and approval is actually thinking for themselves. You carry this knowledge like a weight. You don't become superior, you become quiet. This is why the solitary mind can feel threatening. It's not their arrogance, it's their freedom. They've escaped the social simulation, and in doing so, they reveal the ways others are still trapped in it. You can feel it, can't you? When you meet someone like this, they're calm, detached, but not unkind, focused, strangely at peace in their own skin. They don't need to prove anything because they've seen what lies beyond the noise. This is Schopenhauer's final message. Solitude isn't withdrawal, it's preparation. It's how we build the kind of minds that can actually change the world. Not by echoing what everyone else already thinks, but by going so deep into thought that something new emerges. These people haven't given up on connection. They've just stopped needing it to survive. They've stopped letting it define them. And now, when they do choose to connect, they bring with them something rare, wisdom. So if you find yourself drawn to solitude, don't apologize for it. Don't let the world shame you into noise. Don't believe that isolation means something's wrong with you. You might just be building a mind that is strong enough to stand alone. And that, as Schopenhauer knew all too well, is the beginning of something terrifyingly intelligent.